Okay, so we're going to start, and we're going to start with an overview from Mexico. Eric had done a great job on the overview from Mexico, so we're going to run that, and then we'll get right into the program.
Hello from Mexico City. I'll give you a brief summary of these days of COVID-19. Starting on March 30, announced a national health emergency, suspending all non-essential activities and leaving hospital, grocery stores, security, and takeaway food, among others. On April 21st, Mexico officially in phase 3 of the pandemic.
I would read the subtitles because some of the audio is
economic plan to face the crisis, which include 11 measures centered on austerity. Measures include new pay cuts for high-level public officials, elimination of some posts in government, and additional credit for small and medium companies. Until today, the government of Mexico has not announced any relevant economic support. As in other countries during the pandemic, grocery stores have the biggest role, followed by commerce that has played a fundamental role, and on-demand delivery company as Rappi and Corner Shop that have a rebound in its operation. According to a study by Boston Consulting Group, the estimated date to restart activities could be during July. However,
okay, we're ready to get started. We'll play that. We'll get that fixed for next week. Great. So today we're getting back to New York. But before we go to New York, we're going to be running around the world as usual, and we have a special guest, Matt Bauer. As you can see, he's preparing the studios for our call a little bit later. So the idea for anyone who's new, the idea for retail, the real-time network came up about 2 months ago when I realized that we're getting information from around the world that maybe would be useful for people. So we've been at this for about 6 weeks. It's every Tuesday at 9 o'clock, and we have a schedule that is set in Eventbrite, but I want to talk to some of you after this to be sure that this is exactly what you're looking for and need. So we're really very, very happy to have Matt Bauer, and he's coming up very shortly. So for those of you who, what is this retail store tours? We started this about 3 years ago. We're starting our program very, very soon. We'll have N95 masks. This is the largest virtual and real-time store tour in the world. We have over 20 different cities, 15 programs in New York, including Madison Avenue. We've also have workshops. We've gotten requests from people regarding workshops. So we do our workshops based on the 8 success factors in retail. We've also virtualized our tours for those who don't want to travel because of safety reasons. You can sign up for a virtual tour. We also have the largest store database in the world. So that's a resource open to some. We have 28,000 photos and videos in there, so it's a good way to spend the afternoon. We also have a new proposal that we're bringing forward, and we think about Albert Einstein. Every so often, this quote comes up, and we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. So we're launching the World Retail Forum on the 16th in a few weeks. It's going to be 3 hours, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a lot of the different insights and best practices around the world and share them so that when we go to market as retailers, we can get it right the first time. We're going to look at best practices for department stores, shopping centers, grocery stores, restaurants, and importantly, boutiques and single stores. We're going to start in Asia. We're going to do a roundup for about an hour. So think of, if you're familiar with the format of TED Talks, but it's TED Talks and how to. We're going to Europe, which has been very, very busy this last week, and then we'll end up in the US and Latin America. We're going to be focusing on what we see as the factors to succeed. So it's safety, it's the use of technology, the ability to constantly change, and we're going to give you examples of that. Cooperation. I mean, we all have everything to gain by getting retail back on track, including employee training, making sure everyone's engaged. And we have some thoughts for design towards the end of this. We're going to run around the world right now with some updates, and then we're going to go to Matt. So, but we're going to start in New Zealand. I was on the phone with New Zealand earlier this week, and basically last week they moved to level 2 last Thursday, which means that they are pretty much clear for a lot of businesses to reopen. However, if you go to New Zealand, they essentially have the country locked down until early 2021. There's a 4-week quarantine. So things are opening, but use that word carefully. If we jump over to Australia, it's a little bit similar to New Zealand. The Prime Minister feels like the country is going to be back online in July, but very much like the US, every state and territory has its own timeline. And that's really kind of the model around the world we're seeing right now. If we go to China, lots of news here from China, and then lots of news from the world. So when we first started this, consumer sentiment in China was 43, and now it's moved up to 57. So we're heading in the right direction. We'll show you some stats that indicate the US is on the upward curve. Last week, we reported the Double 5 event. And so what we've seen so far in the first couple of days is 2.2 billion of sales. And basically, for those of you who are just joining, the Double 5 is almost a 2-month program that the city of Shanghai has initiated to get people back shopping. And so it's looking like a big success. So people are out shopping, but pretty much what you see in Shanghai is, this is the luxury segment. So basically you see people pretty much abiding by the safety that's required of them. And when we get into Matt's part, we're going to talk about some of the stats there that are really important. One of the benchmarks for safety and well-being is Disney, and that opened last week. And so here are some of the early shots from the cafeteria. So you can see the social distancing, everything. If you've been to a supermarket or a Walmart or wherever you've been, you see these markers everywhere. So they're pretty much, taking the best practices that you see around the world. In the total Disney fashion, they're welcoming you and also reminding you. And then you can see on the rides that, they're trying to maintain that distance. And so these are all best practices. Certainly Disney is a company that has to get this right. I also want to share some developments because these things are moving quickly. So when we first started reporting about almost 2 months ago, the restaurants, this is Singapore, are at around 30%. And right now in Beijing, this is as of last week, they're up to about 70. So there is a quick sort of bounce back. And again, this is China. China is a couple of months ahead of us. So anyway, so this is good news for the restaurant business. If we just jump over to Europe for a second, what we see there is soccer opening up. I mean, Germany opened up last week. They've approved soccer. Not a lot of people in the stands, but that's it's the baby step. France opened last week. Gallery Lafayette was reporting between 30 and 40% of sales. You might look at that and say, oh my goodness. And I look at that and say, that's about normal because that's where China was when it opened up. China was between 30 and 40%. So the fact that Gallery Lafayette is at the numbers is very, very nice, especially the higher end 40%. As you know, Milan opened up, and so here it is. It's very, very not densely packed. You could make the argument there's been no better time to go shopping than now. If we go over to Brazil, and it's been pretty consistent in Brazil over the past few weeks. It's grim, and not to put any say it any other way, the deaths are high, the economic situation is grave, and so they're going to need a little help. If we go to the U.S., the last time we reported this, there were 33 states open. Now there are 46, more or less. Consumer sentiment has gone up a couple of inches, so it's heading up versus going down, which is always good. And then Stacy did a report from Alabama. And for those of you, I know we have quite a few from Latin America and from Europe and Asia. So here's the U.S. pretty much. We'll let Stacy take it away.
Hi, it's Stacy Kirker from Retail Store Tours, and here's what's happening in my small city of Enterprise, Alabama.
Since the reopening of Enterprise on May 11th, I have noticed a few changes, but not as many as I expected. Essential stores, such as Walmart, still have high customer traffic and an empty shelf or two. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey encouraged other non-essential businesses to reopen, but to still practice social distancing. Floor signs, shopping directions, and barriers directing people where to enter and exit are still incorporated into many of our local stores. After talking to an employee at a local shop called Boll Weevil Soap Company, I found that they did not feel the negative effects quite like they thought. They adapted to using curbside pickup and encouraged online ordering so that customers could continue to shop. Upon entering the store, an employee kindly asked me to wash my hands before shopping. It may take some time to find a new normal post-COVID-19, but for now, it looks like it's back to business as usual for Enterprise, Alabama.
That's pretty representative of the United States as COVID-19 cases decline. So here's some room to here's some happy thoughts for you on Tuesday, the 19th. There is a return to retail. This is mobile data from Unicast that shows that people are going back. There is an activity in people using their cars, and also Southwest Airlines is seeing a slight increase in traffic. So the patient's coming back to life. A couple of big pieces of news. The government had announced the Warp Speed Initiative, which is, for those of you familiar with American history, it's a Manhattan-type project to help with the production of the vaccine. This is significant because the last time the United States was involved with a Manhattan project, we invented atomic energy. We were building 8 aircraft carriers a month. And basically that was the birth of venture capitalism. So it's a good thing. Also, the initial trial from Moderna were very positive. In the phase 1 trial, everyone that had the vaccine responded really well. So they're going to the second phase. Disney is opening up very slowly, but opening up some of the resorts in Orlando, which is good. So what's happening in China is coming here. And today we're going to focus on 2 of the areas that we've identified as important for success in retail. And there's probably no better group that embodies change and the unique and special value proposition of the Madison Avenue bid. So we're back in New York, and that's a great place to be. But a couple of things I wanted to share with you, and this is some very recent data, and this is really important, and I'm seeing this around the world, so it's worth a slide or two. The first is that the consumer expectations are, when they go back, this is from McKinsey, by the way, when they go back, that things will be cleaned, there will be masks and barriers in place, distancing will be outlined, there will be a lot of sort of non-contact purchasing. And so you're going to start seeing this, and Matt's going to talk about this in detail. This is for those who are optically challenged, but I put this slide in place for those of us who can actually see it. So the importance of this particular slide is that there is an expectation that people will continue to buy some of the key things you find on Madison Avenue through digital means. So again, small changes, but yet they happen. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Matt. Before I do, Matt on our rehearsal call was talking about how Madison Avenue says, Dan, you can tell Madison Avenue by the cars on the street. So I said, okay, let me look at the 1930s. Let me look at the 1950s. Aha, now I know what Matt's talking about, because right here, this was a couple of weeks ago. And right now, this is how it's looking. So Matt, welcome, and happy to have you on the program. So tell us how it's going.
Hi, this is Matt Bauer. Hi, pleasure to be with you on the call. I do apologize for any. Okay.
Okay, Matt's going to mute himself, and I've got him on speakerphone for the audio.
Okay.
Are you there, Matt?
I am there.
I am there.
Forgive me for the problems with our connection.
Just go ahead and mute your computer.
Just give me, and I'm shutting off my, lowering my computer so I don't get feedback.
Perfect.
Good.
You know,
So
I feel like a caller on WFAN when Steve Summers says, "Don't, shut off your phone." So I do apologize for that. Can you hear me now?
Dan, are you able to hear Matt?
Yes, now I can hear you. I'm sorry.
There we go. So the first thing I wanted to talk to everyone about was when I spoke to Matt last week.
All right. So I do apologize for the connection issues, but I just want to say greetings from Madison Avenue in New York, where our Glee team right now is cleaning the streets and making sure our street is nice and sanitized for the visitors that are coming in. I run the Madison Avenue Business Improvement District, I should say, which runs from 57th to 86th Streets on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It's the largest luxury shopping district in the United States, going 1.5 miles along Madison Avenue from 57th to 86th Streets. The organization is funded by a special assessment on all the property owners in the district, and we're involved with security, sanitation, marketing, promotion, all to make Madison Avenue as strong as it could be. We are a public-private, not-for-profit organization, one of 75 bids in New York City.
Great. And so, Matt, if you can hear me, the thing I wanted to talk about was your meeting that you had with Apple last week, and the fact that you've been meeting every week with members of the bid. So, can you explain how you're getting the Madison Avenue ready for business?
Sure. Since immediately after the closure began in March, we began to do virtually our regular Madison Avenue mixers. We've been doing these since 2004, every month at a different store along Madison Avenue, where businesses could sort of network with each other, could compare notes about what's going on, and get to know one another. Very quickly thereafter, when we started, a week after the pandemic began, we said we shouldn't stop the mixers, especially now when there's a need for communication. So we use Zoom, which usually works better than it does right now, to connect all of our businesses. And at the very beginning, the stores and managers came onto the phone and compared their notes first about how to do logistics, from how to get your mail as the store is closed, to dealing with insurance. Then we shifted to issues related to funding, where we spoke about the funding programs that were offered first by the City of New York for small businesses, and then we shifted to the funding initiatives by the federal government through the CARES Act. But and then about the last month, I should say, we started to shift our discussion a bit to reopening, even though we know that that's still a far way time away. We began to field questions about what reopening would be like. And yes, that's where Apple came in. We recognize recognize, for example, that Apple has a store on Madison Avenue at 74th Street. And what we started to recognize is that people are going to be a bit reticent about coming back into stores. And we asked Apple to give a presentation about how to take better photographs using your iPhone so that you could communicate that better with stores. We also use, with clients, I should say, where store employees could sort of text or send photographs of their product and get that out to clients. Then we also had Apple speak to us a bit about scheduling software that's available and even contactless payment systems. We even had also other experts from the neighborhood speak. For example, the owner of Jeeves Dry Cleaner on 65th Street, just off of Madison, who's an expert in cleaning, spoke about how to sanitize products after they've been worn. So we've been using the resources of the colleagues on Madison Avenue to perform our businesses. And, you know, we've been using these meetings also as a way for businesses to say, hey, this is what we were thinking of doing. What do you think? And we've been getting a lot of that going back and forth.
So Matt, a couple things. One is for those who are watching on the screen, there is to emphasize what Matt's talking about. There's for those of you who know a company called Shop, SHOPS, Shop Shops. They are actually sort of like a QVC meets luxury. So people are, that young lady that's holding that gown there, that they're actually live streaming into China, and people are buying that. So that's the way that digital is actually turning into revenue. On the second part, last week we had a company that had basically a CRM, and their sales associates, again, stores are closed, but they were doing double the volume, digitally using those tools. And then the last one, these are new slides, Matt, was there was a luxury store that opened. It's blackened out, can't see it, but they opened and they did $1 million in 18 days, which was way a track, and that was digitally. So, so Matt, I've got that slide up that talks about the return to retail and sort of what's involved in terms of store layout and training and so forth. And did you want to talk about that? What's sort of what the new retail looks like in Madison Avenue?
Sure, absolutely. And one thing I should tell your audience is that last Thursday evening, Governor Cuomo released a series of guidelines for retailers that in New York State that are going to be open for phase one of the redevelopment process, reopening process, which is curbside delivery and pickup. And a lot of public safety related and sanitation related programming is actually part of those guidelines. So for example, stores having to operate at 50% of their maximum capacity, or that all employees must be wearing face coverings. We on Madison Avenue are also saying that any guest who comes in on Madison Avenue needs to be wearing a face covering, that there needs to be distancing, that there needs to be a requirement that safety checks are for all employees when they come in to make sure that they're healthy, and to record that and log that. In addition, on Madison Avenue, what we're adding on to those safety lists is some of the things that Madison Avenue is all about, which is that degree of service, especially now that given clients at the very beginning may be reticent about coming into stores. So that includes things like free local delivery of your product, of your purchases, which is such an important part of what Madison Avenue is about. Also providing private shopping experiences and shopping by appointment at your store. So many retailers on Madison Avenue already right now are setting up where you could do a drop-off, but we could deliver to your home by fulfilling an order in your store, in the store, which is very significant. We're also going to be sanitizing or quarantining any item that has been tried on or touched by a guest. And that's a really important element for maintaining the sense of both the sense of safety and the reality of safety in a store, is to make sure that pieces, once they're touched or tried on, is that they're either sanitized or are quarantined for a period of time. So that's something that we're going to be engaging with on Madison Avenue. But I think the biggest point about it is that the stores on Madison Avenue are working together. They're thinking together. They're recognizing that a visit to the street doesn't involve just one store, but involves the entire experience along Madison Avenue. And that's why we're really trying to come up with some degree of standardization among so many different stores, about 400 businesses along our street.
Really good point, man. And we can all remember in our collective memory here that our first trip after 9/11, when we went through all the machines and took our shoes off and belts off and who knows what else we took off. When we took our first flight and the flight attendants were there and they were reassuring and the captain was welcoming us back, that was the bridge we crossed going back into the world of travel. And Matt outlines a very similar bridge that we'll be crossing soon as we go back to retail. And I think your point's exactly correct, Matt. They won't differentiate one store from the next. And so for those of you who are in the restaurant business, here's a spacing schematic as well, because I think you do have quite a few restaurants as well, Matt, on Madison Avenue. Some delicious, some terrific food there.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, even before the pause order in New York, which closed down most non-essential businesses, or closed down all non-essential businesses, restaurants were asked to be first at reduced capacity and then to shut down to guests. However, they've been allowed to do takeout and delivery. And one of the first initiatives that we've done is to list all the restaurants that are on Madison Avenue, over 20, that are right now providing takeout and delivery services to the neighborhood. And, it really, a number of the restaurants have told me that there really been some great support from the local community for the local restaurants. And that's really made a big difference to them. And as a matter of fact, in the last week, additional restaurants have gone that were originally closed have now opened again for takeout and delivery. And we are, like I said, promoting them through paid social media. And we're also promoting businesses on Madison Avenue that are that are not open to the public, but are still filling orders locally, that are shipping from their stores. They're having special experiences online, and we are promoting that through a program called Madison Avenue Now, and that's available on our website and through paid social media advertising as well, to promote the businesses that are here and doing business doing business virtually or through drop off direct or shipping directly from their store, which is allowed by city and state. Only one person can be in the store, only one employee in the store to fulfill orders, but that is something that people are taking advantage of. And one thing that differentiates Madison Avenue store managers is that they really do have relationships with their clients. So it makes sense that our store managers are getting emails and getting calls from their best clients, often residing in the Upper East Side, and they're delivering. And one store manager has told me that she's gotten to know all the doormen along Fifth Avenue because she's doing delivery so frequently to these individual buildings.
That's such a great. You're doing so many, I just love what you've done. And if those of you who are on the phone haven't done it, so just to recap, so Madison Avenue Now was basically formed at the inception of the crisis. So they've been communicating, they've been cooperating, and now they're in various training modes. So it's just terrific. We're going to pause for some questions for Matt, for those of you, but here's some creativity out of Brazil. So order pickup, and so Brazil is always terrific. Virtual styling appointments. Here is the sale of spirits in Brazil, and so you've got, it's almost like a bank. And I love this last one, which is sort of a campaign, and basically it says, "Come in and wash your hands for free." So a lot of creativity in the world of Brazil. Again, every week we've got different programs coming up, and I'm going to open it up now for some questions. And so here we go. So does the more spacious question for you, Matt, and the question is from Benson, and Benson is asking, does the more spacious setups indicate cost increases to come to make up for the difference in sales? So I guess, how do you reconcile the smaller footprint for sales and keep sales up? Question for you.
A very good question. One of the interesting points, and I'm going to say this is part of our discussion, is how are the stores going to be set up for private appointments? And one thing that makes Madison Avenue distinct, and I am going to answer this question directly, what makes Madison Avenue distinct is that it's always been about very high degree of service to a smaller number of clients that are, very significant clients, and that purchase a whole collection, not just an individual piece. And what we are going to see, especially with the larger stores, is there's going to be even greater capacity to provide private shopping by appointment throughout the day. So some stores, for example, may be doing this even later, but maybe doing private shopping in the early evening or particular times during the day. The stores that have larger footprints could do that at a much longer period of the day, and separate people by different floors or by different areas in the store. So there's actually a real benefit for that large space, because you can accommodate larger numbers of people as private appointments, because many of these clients are going to want private appointments, and give them the social distancing and the safety that they very much will demand.
Great. Here's a question, Matt, another question from Carol. And Carol is asking, if clothing stores are taking clothes off the rack to be sanitized after someone tries them on, what are the implications for number of staff required, and what are the implications for stock ordering?
Right. That's a very good point. And, the issue of maintaining inventory is going to be critically important, because you're going to be needing to have pieces that are not going to be able to circulate like they typically would. I've heard some interesting ways that people are going to address it. One way was that you create sort of a form that would be in the same size as that piece, and use this form, maybe made out of paper, to try on a piece to have a better sense of what the size would be. So essentially, using a piece that would be available more for sizing and for cut with that particular client before it's actually being tried on. But one thing is that it's also an issue of volume, because the stores that are on Madison Avenue have largely been dealing with with not huge crowds, but with clients with significant means that want this longer term experience in the store, and degree of servicing. And, we think that the capacity, given the number of people that could be in the store at a time, could be able to be a way of addressing that particular issue. But, you're right. It's definitely inventory will be an issue, and I think stores are going to have to make sure that they maintain that and also maintain pieces that could be used almost sacrificially as a trying on item that could be used to size for other pieces in the collection.
Matt, we have another very good question here, and I love this question. It's come up a lot in the last week. Do you see retailers redesigning stores to accommodate curbside delivery going forward? That's part one. Or do you expect more contactless delivery? One more point. Also, what new, arterials are these retailers using in their redesign efforts, such as microbacterial? So the question is three parts. Are the stores, Matt, looking to redesign for curbside? Do you expect more contactless delivery? And what efforts are being made on the materials part to make the materials, thank you, to be more antivirus, antimicro?
Right. No, it's a very good question. And I'll try to address them in order. Though we will have curbside pickup in New York City as phase one of the reopening process, because New York City is New York City, and it's not as auto-oriented, we're going to probably see fewer people driving up to the curb to pick up, though we'll have some certainly, and more of delivery that will be local. And that's one of the reason that I think the stores on Madison Avenue are all saying, yes, we're going to do free local delivery to our neighborhood. It's just an issue of curb space in New York City, where there's loading zones, bus stops, all kinds of things along an avenue that may preclude being able to drive up right in front. One thing, though, that you are seeing is that stores are going to be making sure that right at the front, when people first walk in, there's going to be a place to get your hand sanitizer. And I've seen some innovative branded solutions for hand sanitizer dispensers, because you want to make sure that person, when they walk into the store, that the first thing that they don't touch anything until they get that hand sanitizer on them. So that's going to be an important part of the redesign of the store. You're going to have a spot right at the front for hand sanitizer. And also for things like PPEs like masks. It is the law in New York right now that you need to wear a mask when you're outside, and you have any chance of being within 6 feet of contact with another person, which would certainly be the case as a possibility when going into a store. But many of the store people, we're going to want people before they walk into the store to have their masks on. So one of the things that, and we've been discussing this, is to have, stores will be giving out masks if people do not have them. And we want to make sure that those masks are very handily able to be transferred or given to a guest before they actually walk into the store. So we already have on Madison Avenue, most stores have somebody very close to the door, and that person is going to be doing even more now in terms of making sure people are using that hand sanitizer, and if they don't have a mask, to get them a mask before they walk into the store. So you're seeing that. In terms of physical changes, there are some stores that are on Madison Avenue that are putting in the plexiglass shields, especially some of our essential businesses, our pharmacies and the like, which have like a regular cash register, and you are seeing some of the plastic shields between the space where the client is and the register. but many stores on Madison Avenue don't have a regular register like you would see in other places. So that might not be there, but you are seeing making sure that any type of machine that's used to for credit card purchases, if you're inserting a chip, is sanitized on a very quick and instant basis between guests. So you're going to really need to make that what would be viewed in the past as back of the office, back of the space materials like cleaning supplies are now going to be at the front of the house. And people, instead of saying, well, did somebody leave that out there? No, or people's reaction is going to be, that's making our store and making the space safer. So that back of the house material might be now in front of the house.
Great. We just launched a poll sort of in alignment with your questions. So if you do have a moment to fill out the poll, that would be greatly appreciated. So Matt, would you be open to, people have questions sort of, as a follow-up, because sometimes you absorb this information and, questions come back iteratively. Would you be open to answer any questions, or if I could forward you some questions that I get from the group on the call, would you be open to responding to those?
Absolutely. Glad to do that. And, our website is www.madisonAvenueBid.org. My email address is mbauer@MadisonAvenueBid.org. You can find that on our website as well. And, glad to answer, any questions. We have always had that policy. And I should say that on June 10th, we're going to be having a public meeting virtually called our annual meeting of the membership, and we'll be also able to answer many more questions for the community and residents and any guest that wishes to comment. It's a public meeting that's going to be on June 10th, available on Zoom, and you could register on our website. But yes, certainly anybody should feel free to give me a call or reach out by email.
We're going to bring you back for a progress report in about after this, a couple weeks after it opens, because it looks like some of the polling data we're getting shows that about only, about half are somewhat prepared, and only about 25% are very, very prepared. I say it looks like half are very prepared or mostly prepared. So, that's part of it. That's, again, think of the, 9/11 and your first flight. And so, having whatever the anxiety level is going into the store, as quickly as that can be dispersed is as quickly as the cash register is going to start ringing. So anyway, Matt, this is terrific. Thank you so much. We're able to hear and understand everything you said. Thank you very much for the group that is returning. Sorry we went over, but sometimes the ability to have an expert like Matt and to access all of his information is just wonderful. So looks like we're getting one more question, and let me just see here. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much yourself. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next week. Take care.